Hello everyone and welcome. Today, on the day of recording this, it is the equinox. So in the northern hemisphere, this is the beginning of spring, and for everyone, it's the beginning of Aries season. At least everyone following the tropical zodiac, which is a whole other conversation, which I want to have at some point, because I have a lot of thoughts and I've gone in different directions with tropical versus sidereal, but perhaps we can get into that at some point. But for now, let's go ahead and begin with the flower essence for Aries, which is impatience. It is the flower essence, much like its name, that's often used for impatience, which we'll get more into. But let's just begin with the affirmation for impatience. This is by FES, Flower Essence Society. It says, I accept the flow of life and the pace of others. Patience for process creates freedom in my soul. I am breathing with each moment. My heart pulses with the sacred experience of time. Wow, does that not actually speak to something that I was just thinking about right before hitting record? So how interesting. On a personal note, I hope that all of these speak to you personally as well, because we're all under the same stars. And yeah. So in getting into this, I want to go ahead and pair it with the virtue. According to anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner, Aries is devotion. Devotion becomes sacrificial power. And when I began contemplating this flower essence of impatience with the virtue of devotion, I was thinking about this devotion, this reverence, this recognition of something higher than myself. Like, even if you're looking at something seemingly lower than yourself, actually, even that, finding devotion in all kingdoms of life, that reverence could actually also be a remedy for impatience. Because when you think about when we're impatient, it's like our needs, our thoughts, our inner state, we've sort of put that above whatever it is around us, whatever that may be slowing us down. And actually in slowing us down, maybe we're being asked to look at something more deeply, more reverently. And these questions really led me on a path too of thinking about the personal self versus the higher self, and how Aries as a sign, I've always connected that to identity. Who am I? The birth of who I am as an individuality, my personal self, the differences between me and another. When you look across the wheel at Libra, across from Aries, which there will be a Libra full moon coming up, but it's like Libra takes into account another in this balance between, whereas Aries is about that I, that individual self. And something else that I heard recently that I've been contemplating on a bit is this idea of having to find your identity, your personal individual I, before you can then let in the higher I. And how this might relate in this, devotion becomes sacrificial power, like the sacrifice part of it, is that, imagine like in a lifetime, this is the idea that was brought to me recently that I've been thinking about, that when you hit those teenage years and those in your 20s and stuff like that, an archetype of that time is figuring out, who am I? Who am I in the world? What is it what makes me tick? How do I operate? What am I interested in? What am I passionate about? What am I, called to do? And it's from a more personal place, and it sort of has to be that way. And in a way, I think, because you have to strongly become rooted in that I to then be able to place it on the altar of service and give it up to something higher, or to push the personal self aside to let something higher in. This feels true and related to me to the idea of having to fully plant yourself in matter before you can then rise back up to spirit. And we see this in our individual lifetimes of really coming into incarnation and then, going back out into the cosmos. And we also can see it in, the greater vision of humanity and timeline of the earth, etc. So once again, as I've been working personally with the virtues and kind of slowly trotting, at least for the first time, through also The Light on the Path by Mabel Collins, I'm finding these connections between these things when there are certain parts that I'm thinking about. So I wanted to read to you the 9 through 12 from The Light on the Path. And I think it'd be interesting to think about that higher self. Like, what is that? The higher I, which I've also been deeply contemplating that as well. So this is all very timely for me. So here it is. 9. Desire only that which is within you. 10. Desire only that which is beyond you. 11. Desire only that which is unattainable. 12. For within you is the light of the world, the only light that can be shed upon the path. If you are unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look for it elsewhere. It is beyond you, because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. It is unattainable, because it forever recedes. You will enter the light, but you will never touch the flame. So especially this line, I feel, is extremely relevant. It says, it is beyond you, because when you reach it, you have lost yourself. Again, it's like you have to find yourself first in order to have something to sacrifice, to set aside in order to be on the path of the light or for the higher good. And I appreciate once again that impatience as a flower essence remedy is connected to Aries, because it shows how we can begin to do this in the small everyday moments, actually. Which that is, it's easy to look at big spiritual concepts and think in this sort of huge way, and then maybe almost, feel like you have it because it's like this bigger concept, and not so much like, it becomes really apparent when you're feeling agitated by something or like impatient about something in the moment that, you are operating from your personal self. You know what I mean? So impatience as a flower, it has this tendency to sort of spit out its seeds in this kind of like aggressive way. But then when you look at the transformed aspect of impatience, it's like this open-mouthed kind of beautiful flower just ready to receive. And what a lovely picture of reverence, if we're also thinking of reverence as being an antidote to this. And again, reverence actually being an antidote to also living out of our personal selves, because in reverence, you are acknowledging that there is something higher and greater than you. And with reverence, if you're living in a, constant state of striving for reverence, how you can find that even in the smallest things, reverence, it does bring you into a constant state of actually, yes, bringing you to the present and actually fully being there. Which brings me to the Oracle card, which I pulled from the Mother Mary Oracle, my very favorite, by Alana Fairchild. And we got Our Lady of the Ripening Vine. A fire truck just went by, so I had to practice a little bit of patience myself in waiting to read it. All right, here we go. I ask you to surrender your future thinking to me. Although your future contains the promise of great blessings, do not let this distract you from the blessing I bestow upon you in this moment. I ask you to open your arms to my blessings in the here and now. You are the sweet fruit, heavy on the vine. The time for harvest has come. This is your time. Many of us who love the Holy Mother are dreamers. We might be practical and hardworking, attending to the details of daily life and spiritual consciousness, but we have hope in our hearts. Yet that hope may be for the future, our future, that of our children, of our planet. This hope is precious light that is needed in the world. Yet our light of hope is also needed in the here and now. We need to be living the divine now, not only dreaming of a more divinely aligned life and a fantasy of our future. The divine wants us to live our light now, to benefit ourselves and the world with our presence. Now, yes, we are always growing, yet there is a readiness within you now. This oracle comes to you as a confirmation. There's something within you, something of you that is ready, even if the immediate reality doesn't match a fantasy that you have once held about how life would be when you would finally share more of yourself with the world. You are still ready, and this is your time to shine. In this oracle, the Mother asks you to honor the light that is ignited within you now and to act upon it with utter faith. The dreamers are needed in this present moment, you see. We can help the sacred becoming, the healing of the world according to the Divine Mother's grace, by how we choose to be at this time. We are not just building spiritual consciousness for a future time. We are building it to live in it now. Now is the time to trust. Now is the time to know that you are her chosen child, her heavenly son or daughter, that you are divine in flesh. This is your time to be living with complete abandon into your own soul, knowing that the spiritual energy within you is now manifesting itself in your physical reality. There's not only blessing in your future, there's blessing for you to succeed in this present moment. So I think this is, again, beautifully connected with the flower impatience. And this idea of really, truly bringing yourself to the present moment, which is also rooting yourself into now and into your individuality and what you can do right now, not just sort of dreaming of a far off, reality in which we're all living in a more spiritual way. It's like, yeah, again, how can I do this in each moment with reverence? And in doing so, that becomes this sacrificial power then of being able to let the higher self and the higher purpose in. So now I'd love to get into some connections with the spring equinox, with Ostara at this time, and this rebirth energy of spring, because once again, it's almost like you have to let your personal self die in a way, or things about how you've lived die to let in this higher truth, higher self, higher possibility. And so this is the season of rebirth coming from death. So I have here for you a journal prompt that I wrote along with a card pull if you do have a deck that you love and you want to pull a card. So the prompt is: spring is a beautiful time to connect with the rebirth forces of the earth and within us. We cycle around, not to stay in a loop, but hopefully to be in continual transformation. Reflect on the changes in you between now and this time last year. What has been transformed? What is a greater story emerging from your life? What might you be called towards anew this time around? And our card pull is: what is a potentially untransformed part of my life to pay attention to? So you can't make this up. I just have to say, like, this is one of those moments where, like, this is just exactly what I pulled. So personally, my card pull for what is a potentially untransformed part of my life to pay attention to is the Devil card. So yeah, I mean, it's just, it's so obvious, but it's one of those things actually, like, you don't want to look at, you don't want to think about, like, what are the selfish, unconscious, darker forces that do work in me. We all have them, and we have to be willing to face those and transform them in order for something new to come in that's possible. And again, it's like this continual, it's not like you do it once. It's not like you sage yourself and then you're like, okay, I'm all good, you know? It's like what we just read in the Light in the Path, where it's this ever receding light. Like, we're always moving forward. We're always transforming, and we're always finding new layers and new things, or returning. Oh, wait, look, there it is again. That thing, it came back, you know? But I think that's why this is so helpful, this card pull of what is untransformed to pay attention to, especially with me, oh my goodness, yes, getting this double card. To then also have it paired with the journal prompt, because the prompt is asking you to look at, like, look how far you have come between now and a past time. What have you learned? What have you been able to become conscious to? What have you been able to transform? And then in realizing that, like, how possible it is, there's hope, and you might be more willing to sort of face, like, hey, aren't you glad you faced some of those unconscious things within you? And why don't you do it again, you know? And also, with this being the equinox, there is this rebalancing, this like feeling of finding equilibrium and finding balance. And in one of our very, very unconscious asleep parts of ourselves that are kind of, you know, very much hidden in the darkness and the shadows, is our will force. And that brings me to our other flower essence, which, so the first ones that I introduce in these episodes are always one of the 12 healers from the Bach essences. Those 12 healers have been identified, not by Bach himself, although he did believe in the zodiac and, you know, believed in that connection there, have been kind of associated with different flowers. That's what brought, you know, Aries being associated with impatience, is like a later sort of analysis of those 12. And so I'm personally doing my own analysis with another set of 12 flower essences by FES, Flower Essence Society. And there are 12 core heart remedies. And I've especially been working with those and finding the connection between the two. So for me, what I'm connecting with, you know, impatience and Aries is hawthorn. So again, what we just spoke about with the will actually being like this, you know, very unconscious part of ourselves, and what might linger there and what might really be driving our lives through our will. Hawthorn is a remedy for if your will forces are overriding your heart forces or are out of balance. So again, it's about bringing yourself back into balance with the heart, which is in the center. So if your will is out of balance in this certain way, which I think is connected to the impatience flower and impatience, this is a remedy that can help with an over-assertion of power, a type A personality, aggression and forcefulness. So again, I think it's important to mention the type A personality, because this assertion of power might not necessarily be in the physical way, where you might think of like, oh, someone who's kind of, you know, overly aggressive and really trying to control others in this kind of like, you know, like powerful, like, you know, you could even say like masculine kind of a way. But actually, no, we can be that way in other ways. We can be controlling in our words. We can be type A towards, yes, ourselves and others, and kind of an unbalanced, like an overly domineering way. So here is the affirmation for hawthorn. And I just want you to think about how related this is to everything we've been talking about with the higher self. And yeah, I'll just read it first. It says, "My heart is harnessed to a higher power. Not my will, but a greater will works within me. Now I feel my blood's force flowing freely. Now I become the power of love." So what happens when those unconscious will forces can actually be wielded for love? What happens when they're used on behalf of love? And that, I think, is that sacrificial power. There's that word power again. But it starts with devotion. It starts with recognizing something higher than yourself. Once again, my purpose of this series is looking at the connections between these things, and I think that's where we can find new thoughts. So I hope that this has inspired you. I hope that you take the journal prompt with you if it feels helpful, and I will see you next time.